cast your ballot. Polls open at 7 a.m., close at 8 p.m. This election is very important on all levels, not just the presidential. We have a number of candidates that are running. We have one in the studio this morning, but early voting. The game has changed. Early voting begins October 19th here in the city of Boston. Make sure that you go out and vote early. We're going to be having at the Carbon Square CDC 86 Southern Avenue. We're going to be meeting there, doing some door knocking, canvassing with Jack and Jill in the Dorchester Community Development Corporation. We really want people to come out and go ahead and participate in the election. We have some number of ballot questions on the ballot this year. Number 2, in particularly, the MCAS, the M class, to eliminate the test for graduation requirements, and also the tipping. Question number 5. There's a number of questions on it. Make sure you look them up. Next week, we're going to be going over the ballot questions so that folks will know what they can vote for or against. So this morning, we have a special guest here, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate, John Deaton. He is here with us this morning. Welcome to Boston Black News. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
it
man.
really is my honor to be here.
Yeah. Tell me your story. I was reading it. Your staff member Claire sent me your bio, and I was reading. I thought, this guy seems like he's all right,
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us your story so that our listeners and viewers on 30 media outlets, right, 200,000 viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Hey, man,
listen, you're not going to see someone like me usually in politics. I come from a single mother on welfare and food stamps. I grew up in a place called Highland Park, Detroit. You could look it up, ranked top 10 worst neighborhoods in America for the last 40 years. The Detroit city ordinance put a sign not too far from one of my houses that said, "Enter at your own risk. Police do not patrol the area." A very violent neighborhood. Deadbeat dad abandoned us in that area. And so to give you an idea, 6 years old, my mom got stabbed in front of me. Unfortunately, for a period of 2 years, between 9 and 11, I was the victim of a child predator in the neighborhood who would, rape me for a period of 2 years and threatened to kill my mother if I told anyone. And you can imagine, I just saw her get stabbed 3 years earlier, so you can imagine what that does to a 9-year-old's mind.
Right.
My best friend, who sort of protected me in that neighborhood, he was 5 years older than me, died in my arms in a drive-by gang shooting. I was 17, and my first day of high school, I had a .38 shoved in my mouth. So the next day, I was a high school dropout, just like everyone in my family, and I was devastated. I had this dream to go to college, and to tell people what poverty really does, intergenerational poverty does to someone. My mother caught me crying, and she was like, "Why are you so upset?" And I said, "Mom, I want to go to college. I got to graduate high school."
Right.
And she said, "Well, just do what your brother did. Work for a few years. 17, I'll sign over. You join the military." That was our ticket out of the hood, right? And I said, "Mom, I don't want to do that. I want to go to college." And my mother, God bless her, she's my hero, man. Right. She put her arms around me and said, "Son, I'm sorry, but that's just not, college just isn't for people like us," right? And that's what poverty had done to her. It had stripped her of her ambition and handcuffs the mind and the spirit. And so at 14, I vowed I was going to break the cycle of poverty. If I ever had kids, I would be a good father unlike mine. And I got, it just shows you that if one person gives an act of kindness, can make a difference in a person's life. I found a principal who felt bad for me, but he made me earn it. The tuition and this private, 198 students, a real tiny Catholic high school. And he said, "Look, tuition's $1,400 back then." He said, "I'll cut it." Could have been 14 grand for me, right? But he said, "I'll cut it in half. You play 2 sports. You maintain a 3.5 grade point average, and you be active in the church,
right?
And get me off the street. I'll cut the tuition in half," which he did. And I found a job after football or basketball practice, washing dishes, waiting tables. Paid my way through high school, made it to college, and then I made it to Boston. Went to New England School of Law, and Miguel and Jose, they're still there at the law school, security.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about Boston, and so I go up to him because I'm dead broke, and I said, and I'm starting law school. So where do you recommend a guy looks like me not live.
Right.
They said, well, stay out of Roxbury. My next question was, how do I get to Roxbury? And that's where I lived. And for first year, my second year East Boston, my third year Malden. And I'm the American dream. And the reason I'm running in the race is because I think it's dying. I think people have been priced. I wonder, can a kid from Brockton, Roxbury, Springfield, Mattapan, could they do what I did if they were given an opportunity? And it bothers me. When you escape poverty like I did and you become successful, you don't want to be the last one. Right? It's kind of lonely because you don't necessarily fit in with sort of the class of people, right? They look at me, and to be honest with you, first 2 years, 2 decades of my life, I was called white trash because I lived in the hood. My mother had 6 kids with 4 different fathers. The fathers weren't around, and so, but I am America. That's what I tell everybody. I'm the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. You know what I mean? I am America.
Well, let's talk about America right now because it's not so beautiful. Right. And what is some of the, I would say, issues that you see are problems in our country right now? I mean,
well, the first problem is this division, right, that people have. But I got in the race because income equality has got to be attacked. The wealth gap in this country has gotten worse every year. Right. The haves versus the have-nots. And opportunity you have to give people opportunity and have access to opportunity. And I think that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker and narrower. And so we got to attack that. Because the division, and when I say division, I'm not talking about, let's say, politics. I'm talking about the division between the haves and the have-nots. We've got to do something about that, or we're headed off a cliff.
What about the division between parties? The Republican Party, the Democratic Party, they're just so far apart, and things are not getting done. And then we got the wars internationally. You're running against a powerful individual. Yes. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren. You're running for the seat. Let me just say that. Right. You're running for the same seat, okay? Right. And what is your path to victory?
My path to victory is just getting the message out. When people see me, when they learn who I am, when they see that there's no one like me in the Senate that overcame poverty, small business owner, all those things, they learned that I was in the Marine Corps for 7 years. I served my country.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yep.
Then this race is very competitive. If all people know is that John Deaton is a Republican and Senator Warren is a Democrat in Massachusetts, she's going to beat me. But once they learn, and we did polling to prove this, once they learn a little bit about me, then it's a close race. Okay. And so we have the debates on October 15th and October 17th. They'll be live. Everybody should tune in. And I think people, when they see a real alternative, I'm a centrist. I'm a common sense kind of person who wants to attack these issues. I don't get into the division. Okay. I reject it. I've spoken out against leaders in my party, right? I've spoken out against President Trump. I've spoken out against other Republican leaders, and I've spoken out against the Democrat
What have
leaders.
you said against Trump? Just curious.
Well, in 2019, because of the division, I was very critical of him. Critical, like his vice president nominee was very critical of him, similarly. And it's all about, the division that people are promoting. I think Senator Warren promotes that division as well. We've got real problems. Listen, we've got the immigration problem. It's bankrupting the state. People who have not participated in the American dream yet, who were born here, raised here, living here, they're not being given the kind of opportunity or money or aid that people who are coming here just today, whether they're here legally or illegally, I'm not going to get into that, right? But the point being is that people are not being heard that are already here. And so that's one example. Then we've got the debt crisis, $36 trillion in debt, credit card debts at $1.2 trillion, student loan debts at $1.7 trillion. We pay $3 billion a day in interest in this country. We're going off a cliff on that. Then you got the opioid addictions. You've got foreign wars that you referenced that are happening. You got leaders talking about nuclear war and nuclear options, World War III. All that's happening, but the greatest crisis we face is a crisis of leadership because you have people who fuel that division. between us,
Right.
so that they can stay in power. And so President Trump's part of that problem. Elizabeth Warren's part of that problem. And I think people are ready for someone that just wants to solve the problems, wants to make a difference in people's lives.
Right. So let's talk about immigration, because that's a major issue. I mean,
100%.
you alluded to the point that individuals here are not being taken care. Let's talk more about that.
Well, sure. Listen, I went to the border because when they took, like I said, I lived in Roxbury my first year. All right. And then when they took the rec center and used it to house the migrants, that struck home at me, because I know.
Melnia Cass.
Right.
Center, yep.
I know what idleness for someone in the inner city is a disaster, right? You want a kid to have sports and have some structure. And so I used to be one of those kids. So I said, let's go to the border and find out how bad it is. It's terrible. They have like bus stops along the way. The migrants come, they don't run. They get picked up. They don't have any identification. You don't know if their name's right. You don't know if they come from a place of terrorism like Iran or North Korea or China or any of these places.
Right.
And they're given a court date 8-9 years from now.
Right.
They're like, here, come back 8 years from now. And then they leave, and then they come to places like Massachusetts. We're spending over $1 billion, right? We just noticed what's happening in North Carolina. Our government just said they don't have any more money for FEMA.
Right.
For the people in North Carolina. How's that possible? How's it possible that you can find money for everything else, to fund all these foreign wars, to fund the migrants who are coming here on a daily basis? You can pay for them, but you can't pay for the people in Hawaii who lost their homes, or the people in North Carolina who just lost their homes. That's insanity to me.
Right.
You know, combat vets don't get a priority if they're homeless.
Right.
You lose a limb. You suffer from PTSD, you're homeless, but you got to wait in line because of people who are coming over. Nothing against, listen, I tell everyone, I don't have to demonize the migrants. I assume 90% or 99% are good people, just want a better life. I can identify with that. But
So what's your alternative? We can talk about
Sure.
problems, because we all know about the problems.
Sure.
I'm black, so I know.
You know some problems.
Right. How do you deal with the problem? What is your policy? What do you propose as someone who wants to be the one to fix the
Sure.
problem? What would be some of the policies that you would present?
Okay, well, the first thing on the border is we have to secure it. You have to. Senator Warren objected against the immigration reform bill, which would have brought resources to Massachusetts.
Right.
She even objected to President Biden putting a $2,500 person cap. So you secure the border, you expand legal immigration, make it more accessible, but have a zero tolerance for illegal. You got to end catch and release. That's happening, and the policy that existed before was the migrants would remain in Mexico until their court date, and then they would get a court date. So we reinstitute that policy. So that's the solution for immigration problem. As far as like income inequality and things of that nature, first thing is education on, you have to give people access. The only people that have done well in the last 20 years are people who have owned assets, stocks, right? The stock market's at all-time highs, real estate skyrocketing, even Bitcoin, things that people own have increased. So that's the top 10% in America. And so Senator Warren and others, they don't allow access to that type of stuff. For example, there's a rule called the accredited investor rule. You have to be worth $1 million, and you don't get to count your house or make $300,000 a year for 3 years in order to own private equity.
Right.
Well, you just excluded 85% of the American population. Why? And the reason they give you is because we want to protect you from making a bad decision.
Right.
Well, this is America. We're allowed to make our own decisions. You know, I was just in a diner in Dorchester, obviously before I came on the show, and what do I see? I see an ATM machine of scratch tickets, right? Well, they got no problem with that. They got no problem with selling that stuff, but they want to prevent us from being able to buy shares of private companies. That's just one example of things that we have to do to give people, regular people, access to be able to own assets so that they can participate in wealth.
Well, okay, let's talk about the housing issue. not even an issue, crisis, right? You had made mention about the migrants coming here and, getting access to services and folks still here. There are folks that are here that are homeless. As a U.S. Senator, would be some of your ideas as far as housing, because it's not just Massachusetts; it's across the country. But let's talk about my home state, Massachusetts.
Sure.
And we can talk about Michigan too, right? That's you from Detroit.
Well, I'm from Detroit, but I live in Massachusetts, and I've been a lawyer here for 22 years.
Okay, so
I achieved the American dream here, so Massachusetts is my heart.
So you call it, okay.
Even when I was in Detroit during the bad boy days, I was a Celtics fan.
Okay, okay.
You know
Can you
what I mean?
play ball, man?
I can. I can't say I can today. I had game in the day. Absolutely. I would play Saturday, Sunday at Malcolm X Park. It used to be called Washington Park when I was there in 92.
Cool.
But I had game, no doubt.
Okay, get back to housing. So the housing issue is a crisis. And, what are some suggestions as a U.S. Senator if elected?
Sure. Well, the first thing you got to do is it's economics 101. We have no supply but huge demand. But the problem is in Massachusetts, because we're going to talk about that, it is the third highest in the country for housing. It's, if you count rent in greater Boston area, more expensive than San Francisco and San Diego. Now we're number 2 behind Hawaii. The average home in Massachusetts is $650,000.
Right.
That's $200,000 more than nationwide average. If you're talking about greater Boston area, the average house is $980,000. Regular people have just been priced out of it.
Right.
Priced out of it. So you have to expand housing. You have to build. Here's the problem. Builders are telling me it takes 2 years just to pull the permits to build, and then they get more delays. So we got to cut the red tape. We got to get federal dollars to help fund housing in Massachusetts. We need to give tax credits to builders. Also, we need to encourage building within these communities. So how you do that is you give tax credits, which is going to say to both a builder and an owner that if you build in these communities, you're going to get dollar for dollar tax credits.
Right.
And that's going to incentivize. We incentivize behavior. And so the laws and regulations need to incentivize the behavior that you want. If the tax code incentivizes tax cheats and tax avoidance, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
If you incentivize builders and people to go to a certain community and it's going to be financial beneficial to them, then that's how you do it. And so also, we need to make sure that expand the child tax credit. So if you have children that you're getting for your child care, you're getting dollar for dollar tax deductions, tax credits. So you're paying less in taxes so that you can have it for your child care and other things.
What makes you so unique? You said that you had spoken out against Trump.
Yep.
And how do you feel about the Republican Party? Because, when you see some of the things that are happening on the right and the left,
Sure.
Okay, let's be fair.
Yep.
It's very disheartening. I'm an organizer. I do voting rights. I've been doing it for 30 years. And it's so hard to convince people to get involved in the process because of the bickering. Right. The debate the other night, okay, that was, a bromance. Right. That's what I call it. Right. It was a bromance. It was civil.
Right.
So folks had the opportunity to listen to some policy, okay?
Right.
The other one, it was a little bit
it was awful.
It was terrible, okay?
It was.
So for me as an organizer, it is very difficult to tell folks to get involved in the political process, and they still don't see any progress.
Right.
You talked about the racial wealth gap. How do we attack that? For black folks, it says it takes. I said it was an article. I can't remember exactly what paper. I think it was the Wall Street Journal talked about. It would take 200 years for black people just to get just basic. Right. So and there's resistance. What is your feelings about reparations?
I want opportunity, right? Here's the thing. I think it's so difficult, right, to figure out how do you distribute reparations. In other words, are you going to, what if a person is biracial? What if you got a white dad and a black mom?
Cut it in half.
Okay.
I mean, how there are groups that have had reparations.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it's like there seems to be always a resistance when it's black folks.
Right.
Okay.
No, I don't disagree with that.
And it's not even, matter of fact, reparations just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
It's repairment because of all these years of abuse. You've experienced some, but you're a white man.
Right.
And I'm not saying that, you didn't have hard life. You did. Okay, fine. But just imagine the millions of black folks who have gone through this.
But let me tell you what
Please,
I wrote.
I would love to.
No, let me tell you what I wrote in my book. I wrote in my book, when you exclude rappers and professional athletes, I might be one of the only middle-aged white millionaires in America that wished he was black for the first 2 decades of his life. But I stopped wishing it once I got to college and I saw the difference. And I write about that.
Interesting.
And I write about how, I didn't have a privileged life because I was living in the hood. Poverty is poverty.
Right.
Poverty doesn't discriminate.
True.
But once you get to a different area, you do see it. I talk about an event in law school where I'm from the hood. I had like a pager, black hat, Raiders hat on backwards. And there was a black student in law school, name was Bernard. His parents were Harvard law professor and a doctor at UMass, Mass General. And he had a suit on going to class, right? And I looked like a thug, to be blunt, to other people. And we're in the elevator, and this white woman is in with me. Bernard gets in it, and all of a sudden she moves closer to me, and she turns her purse from her left arm to her right arm, right? And moves closer to me. And I got a Walkman on. It was Walkman back then. But I pull it down and I look at it. I go, lady, I'm way more likely socioeconomically speaking to steal your purse than that young man. Right. And then whatever. So I understand it, and I talk about things that a lot of people, especially white guys, wouldn't talk about, which is race. Right. And how I grew up and how I learned the difference, Right. When I was young with my little friends, I used the N-word with them. Right. And then I made a mistake of using it with the wrong person one time. I got my ass kicked, to be blunt. And my friend was like, listen, John, just because I let you pretend you're black when it's just me and you. And I learned this, there is a difference, even though I did live that life, right? Poverty. Right. There is a very big difference between me and someone like yourself, right? So I accept all the things you're saying. But my thing is reparations a one-time check the solution? Or is it education and making sure that generations have access to education and things?
That's why I said reparations and repairment. Okay. So it's not just reparations. Let's talk about an issue that I've seen in the news about you, pro-choice.
Yes.
Why?
Because I believe in freedom. And here's the thing. I'm a father of 3 daughters. And it's a very emotional issue for people. I get it. But at the end of the day, I believe a woman has a right up until viability of the child, right? And even then, if her life's in danger or the fetus is not going to survive, there should be exceptions. But up until then, she has the freedom to make her choice for her. And so that does put me at odds with a lot of people in the Republican Party. Right. And that's okay. We got to get back to voting for who's the best candidate. Sometimes, and this is going to irritate a lot of Republicans, sometimes the best candidate might be a Democrat. And sometimes the best candidate might be a Republican. Right. But we got to, I'm not a partisan person. Right. I've been a Democrat in my life. I've been an independent. And I'm a Republican. And so I don't have a loyalty to a man or an agenda or a party. I just have loyalty to regular people, working families. For 22 years, I've been a lawyer representing working families here in Massachusetts. I genuinely want to try to make a difference in their lives. And so that separates me from all these other people, in my opinion. And when you look at the Senate, you don't see someone like that, right? Senator Warren, I think she had good intentions 13 years ago, right? But she's part of that broken system. I was critical of President Trump, and when I announced, and I'm not supporting President Trump, I'm not voting for President Trump.
Would you accept his endorsement?
I wouldn't accept it. I'd say, listen, I didn't endorse him. He endorsed me. I'm focused on the race. But here's the thing. It doesn't.
What was that, a yes or no?
When you say accept it.
What if he endorsed you? Would you accept it? Like, except, okay.
No, and here's the thing. It shouldn't matter who the president is if you're a senator.
Right.
If it's good for Massachusetts and America, I don't care if it's called liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat. I'm for it. If it's not good for Massachusetts and America, then I'm against it. So if Vice President Harris wins and it's good policy, I'll be her biggest advocate. If President Trump wins, Senator Warren will never do anything that has his name on it. I don't care. Put his name in extra bold font size. I don't care if it's good for this state and this country. And I think that's the test that a senator should have.
Right.
And it shouldn't be Democrat, Republican. We got to get away from the division in this country. We have to reject it. It can't be red versus blue, liberal versus conservative, black versus white, rich versus poor. We got to get back to like loving each other as fellow Americans and having a real conversation, whether that conversation is about race, whether that conversation is about immigration. Let's have a real conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Why should we vote, or why should folks vote for you?
They should vote for me because of that independence. I'm someone who is, when I talk to my daughters, I said, look, girls, I'm thinking of running for office, and I'm not starting off small. I'm going to take on one of the most powerful people in Washington.
Right.
And my daughters looked at me and said, Dad, you're great at everything you do, but we think you're going to lose. And that's how real my kids keep it with me, right?
To keep it real, right?
They keep it real. And I said, all right, girls, why do you think I'm going to lose? And they said, Dad, you're too honest. You are incapable of saying something you don't believe, and you will never sell out. And I looked at my daughters and I said, you just convinced me to run, because that can't be the standard. We can't allow it. So if they want somebody who understands their struggle, in my 40s with a small family, I was hoping checks didn't bounce.
Yeah.
I was struggling. I was working 50 hours a week, still couldn't get ahead. I know what that's like, and I think I can help them by advocating for regular people.
Man, I want to thank you for coming in, man. Appreciate you.
I want to thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's my
man.
honor to be here.
And you have an event here in the hood.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yes, tomorrow at Malcolm X Park in Roxbury from 12 to 4. We're going to have food. We're going to have games. Maybe I'll try to play a little ball at my old age.
Don't hurt yourself, man.
I probably will hurt myself. But anyways, everybody's welcome. Please come out.
Yes, thank you. Again, remember, election is November 5th. October 19th is early voting. You can mail in your votes. Yeah, but the post office having some problems. I'm not going to push that one, but make sure you go out and cast your ballots. Very important. John Deaton, thank you again for coming in. Continue to vote. We're going to be taking our station break and coming up and talk about the hospitals that we're losing in Boston. We'll be right back.
My name is Julisa, and I listen to Boston Praise Radio and TV, 102.9 FM, and Boston Black News.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Tune in to see how extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, tune in to see how
give the narrative. It is imperative that the truth about us we give. No more trying to get ratings with the hating. No more fake news Now we can choose Boston Black News.
Read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Yeah. Tune in to see how extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, tune in to see how extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, tune in to see how read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Read all about it. Extra, extra, tune in to see how black news is coming to you. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, tune in to see how black news is coming to you. When the media tells a story about us, it's a story we cannot trust. Told always from a European point of view. The time to tell our story is overdue. Oh, yeah. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, tune in to see how black news is coming to you. Extra, extra, read all about it. The media stories are negative. Rarely is it positive. Good news about us don't say.
Welcome back to Boston Black News. We're here with Paul Singer from WGBH and his new role, senior editor of Economic Injustice.
Equity
and Justice.
Equity and Justice.
Equity,
Yes, sir.
economics,
Yeah,
equity,
whatever.
equity,
It all rhymes.
equity. Equity and Justice Unit, GBH, which I'm really excited about. Congratulations, man.
Thank you, my friend.
You deserve it, man.
Thank you.
Because you've been around here a lot lately.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I mean, not just in the studio here at Boston Black News, but in the community. There are folks that, I mean, like you, one of us now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us
Thank you,
about
Brother
the
unit.
new role and what are your plans for the future here in Boston and beyond?
Yep. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the entire mission of my unit is to have you change your theme song.
Okay.
Because I come here once a month and I listen to bad news. It's not about us. It's bad news. The positive stories just don't sell. So my job is to make that.
We say black news.
I know.
I know, but you said bad news. Okay.
Like I want to make that song no longer relevant.
Okay.
I want our news to speak to you, to have you speak to us, to elevate your voice, the voice of your community, the voice of other communities that have not been, who have not felt like they're part of GBH News. We are going to go into communities. Like at the moment, I'm planning to be. We'll see what happens. I mean, again, we're sort of just starting, so we don't have plans yet. We have ideas, we have thoughts. The very first thing we're going to do is we have this team of 4 reporters. I'm very excited about the team. Well, 3 reporters and me, and we are going to focus first on being good teammates.
Right.
We're going to get to know each other. We're going to figure out how to support each other. We're going to train each of us up on the things we're weakest at and to get better at them, and to try to, all become sort of a strong team.
Right.
And if we're a strong team, then we can serve. And that's the goal, is to serve.
Right.
Right. So at the moment, my plan is to go be in Brockton next Wednesday, I think it is, all day long, and possibly every Wednesday or every other Wednesday or every fourth Wednesday, just to be there.
Right.
Just to be on the ground, to get to know people and get to know things.
And get the heartbeat of the community, man.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it is be on the ground. So,
Right.
Where can we be on the ground? We also have a reporter who has a particular specialty doing disability reporting, who, near as we can tell, is the only reporter who actually covers the disability community. She wants to also expand that to cover the elders and the seniors community.
Good.
Right. And there's plenty of opportunity to do that stuff. So we're trying to sort of think about how can we go and spend time in these communities and hear what they care about.
Right.
And you and I have had this conversation before. I got all interested in the BRJP, the Boston Residents Jobs Policy,
Right.
which is an important thing about, whether or not the city of Boston is going to enforce its rules to hire women, minorities, people of color, and Boston residents on construction jobs in the city.
Right.
And the only reason I got interested in that is because I was sitting in this radio station listening to Priscilla. Miss Priscilla is telling me, you got to call up, care about this. These people, this is the thing.
Right.
And she was right. Right. And the only reason I knew it is because I was sitting here with you.
Right.
And it became a big story for us, and it's continued to be a big story for us. So, these are the kind of things where the only way we're going to learn what really matters. And GBH's tagline is, what matters to you.
Right.
But the only way we're going to know what matters to you is if we go hang out with you and learn it.
Right. Well, that's organizing 101, listening to the best experts that are closest to the issues, the problems, or what have you. And I'm glad that the song, Larry Wu, the late Larry Wu, we want to give a shout out to him who created this song because of what you just mentioned. Yep. It's like it's always bad news. Yep. It's constant. It echoes, right?
It does.
Yeah, and so.
And I will say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I looked at a website for a local news organization. I won't name it. A couple of days ago, and it was like, person shot here, murder went on there, this person dying in the brawl and the da da da. And I was just like, man, what a depressing way to start my morning.
Right, exactly. And that's why some folks just don't even listen to the news. They don't watch TV or what have you, because it does affect you, and it affects communities, which adds to the problem of mental illness. Yep. So I'm glad that, and we're going to keep playing this song.
All right, okay.
Until we see some progress.
You should.
I mean, we're going to push it because if it affected you, the man,
Yep.
right? We want to affect many others. So congratulations.
Hold me to it.
Yeah, we will.
Hold me to it.
We're going to see the results,
Yep.
the progress.
Yep.
We are excited that you're in that role because you have been in the community. You've actually seen some things that others haven't. And so often our media outlets try to pick our leaders, highlight the things that catches folks' attention, which is bad news. Yep. I think it's important that we highlight some of the folks that are considered invisible, the disability community, the elders, black people that are not connected to any organization or church. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to see what happens. Now, what's going on with these hospitals?
Okay.
We had a what do you call it? Candidate here, and we have talked about a number of issues. One of the things I didn't get a chance to touch on was the healthcare system and the closing of Kearney Hospital and other hospitals, this whole Stewart crisis. And I know you had did a story on it, so give us your take on that. And
yeah, it's interesting, that I've seen some stuff written about, Kearney Hospital, and people are saying, well, Kearney Hospital, there weren't many people in there anyway. There weren't a lot of beds. People weren't using the hospital, so it doesn't matter so much. Which people weren't using the hospital in part because the hospital was serving largely a low income population, right? But they're low income, but they're not stupid, and they knew that the care there was just not good, and the place was kind of decrepit.
Right.
And so they'd go somewhere else, right? You can't argue that, the hospital isn't of value because nobody was going. What you can argue is that the care was terrible,
Right,
so
right.
nobody was going. But yeah, so the work I've been doing the past few weeks is talking to some of the other caregiving institutions around there. So like Dot Health and Codman Square Community Health Center, they're taking the overflow. I mean, there
Right.
was
Oh yeah.
there were 20,000, we think 20,000 or so people coming to Kearney for urgent care. Mm-hmm. Where are those people going to go?
Right.
And what's been worrisome is that some of those folks tell me not only that they're, obviously the number of patients who are coming into these other facilities is increasing, but they're coming in sicker.
Right.
Which may mean that people who were going to Kearney Hospital or planning to go to Kearney Hospital didn't go or went and found that it was sick, and so they went home for another day and another day and another day, and then they were too sick, and then they finally found themselves at Codman or at Dot Health. That is an emergency.
Right.
I mean, if because and as you know, any condition we're talking about, if you get it early, you're better off. If you get it late, you're in trouble.
Right.
And so if people are actually now losing days because of the closure of this hospital, that's a crisis.
Yeah.
That is a real crisis.
Yeah. And even the other hospitals, like the Mass General, one of the
BMC,
best in the
right,
world.
yeah.
These hospitals are really in bad shape because of the overflow, whatever the cause may be. And the governor did not put this or propose eminent domain for Kearney. And we know that Kearney had the reputation of not being so good. I know that when I had a health issue and I was living not far from Kearney Hospital, I said,
You went to Rhode Island.
They're like, take me to Mass General. Do not do that to me. Brother want to live.
Yeah.
Because my experience, personal experience, and others had some issues with Kearney. They were like, Killer Kearney.
Yeah.
So, but still, it does affect our community. And, why isn't there more effort with all these resources put into, and I know it's private, I get it, but why?
Well, it's a good, and so the next step hopefully gets to this, right? So Michael Curry was on our show yesterday, Boston Public Radio, with Jim and talking about, he has been appointed to a task force with the
I did hear
with the
this.
Public Health Commissioner of Boston, and they're putting together a task force, which he said yesterday was supposed to be named as of yesterday. So today should be their first actual working day. And he said in like 3 or 4 months, they're going to come up with a plan for actual healthcare in that community.
Right.
And part of it is that, was Kearney even giving the right services for this community?
Interesting.
Are there better services? Are there more important services? Are there services that can be provided there? What's going to happen to the building? It's not clear who owns the building. Should the building be changed, fixed, renovated? Could we do? I mean, there's a whole. And I trust Curry in his broad thinking about what is needed.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Curry and this task force have any
Teeth?
I guess ability to deliver, right? I don't know what authority they have been given to actually spend money and make decisions. I don't know that.
Right, okay.
But they certainly have the ability to sit down and bring all the right people to the room and come up with some ideas. And so let's see what happens. I mean, somebody said something really interesting to me that I had never really thought about. They said, never mind the hospital. The problem in this community is not the hospital; it's primary care.
Yeah.
It's that nobody has a primary care physician.
Yeah.
And if you call now to try and get yourself your first appointment,
Probably a year later.
a year later.
Yeah.
And-
Let me take this call.
Yeah. We got a call?
We have a call. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning, Ron Bell. Good morning, Singer. Congratulations.
Good morning.
Thank you, Sister Priscilla. It's very, very nice to hear from you.
How you doing?
Outstanding every day.
You have a question?
No, I just wanted to congratulate him.
Great.
And I see that you all were heading starting to talk about the hospitals. So,
Yep.
not only the hospitals, but also the post office. People aren't getting their mail. That's another story.
Well, but although I will say that never mind the mail for a second. Let me put that aside. That's a different pile. But the pharmacies, right? So if we're gonna lose, what did we lose, Priscilla? It must have been like 3 or 4 pharmacies.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Walgreens.
Right. And there was there a
one,
CVS that also closed? I don't remember.
I'm not sure about
Which is
CVS. I know the Walgreens in Washington Park. There was some issues. I believe they closed it. Yeah. And folks are like now scrambling to get their medications and
keep in mind there was also a private pharmacy inside Kearney Hospital. They've moved over to Bowdoin, so they're still open again, but now they're open 2 miles away, right? So, but this gets to the same question of, if we're going to create what amounts to a healthcare desert in Dorchester, that's a problem.
It's a major problem. Priscilla, what has been your experience with Kearney?
I don't go there. I never went to Kearney. I always heard that Kearney.
Okay, not so much you. I shouldn't say you personally. From your folks that you know.
But I have heard people say
okay.
negative things about Kearney, but still, it was there. A little bit of something's better than a whole lot of nothing.
Right.
And so I think that they should have tried to save that one just like they did with the other one,
St. Elizabeth.
And,
St. Elizabeth in Brighton.
Yes, yes. And so, I mean, that it just seems like things are just continuing to deteriorate in our community.
Right.
And it's also...
Go ahead.
It's also this thing, Priscilla and Ron, I know you guys know this, right? Just like, anytime you're in a medical situation, instead of being able to ask the question, well, what's the service I can get? The answer you get is, well, who's your payer?
Right. Oh, they make sure that they get their money,
and
it's like
and the service you can get depends on who your payer is.
Right.
Like that doesn't seem right.
It's not right.
It's not.
It's not
at all.
And then you wonder, and as a black man, right? If you don't speak up and demand respect, you don't get it. I've watched how staff members at hospitals interact with black people. It's just really bad. And so for a black man to go into a hospital and get treated as such, you are like, I don't even know if I want to deal with this.
Really?
So that's another barrier, and I've actually, when I had my heart issue, I was in the hospital for 4 weeks, and I was an advocate. I was organizing in the hospital because I was fighting for the other. I mean, here I have had two.
Ron's going door to door.
I'm going room to room, right? With my what do you call the things on your chest?
Yeah,
and I'm walking around like, listen, make sure you treat these people right. Because it's just in me to fight injustice, So, but yeah, it's really, I'm listening to Kearney, but it's like the closing of Kearney. It's a give or take, and we've settled for less. We've settled for something, but now is the opportunity to get it right because is the board still functioning? Keith Motley was the president of the board, Priscilla. Dr. Keith Motley and Bishop Dickinson, they were on the board, and that was starting to change the image. So I don't know if they even exist anymore because of the closing. And is there any folks like protesting this?
Well, and I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Priscilla's the person to ask because I know that you've been involved with some of the protesting around the pharmacies. Do you know, Priscilla, whether there is sort of a grassroots group to organize around healthcare on Kearney?
No, I don't know. If there is a group, I don't know about it.
All right. Well, if you're out there, listeners, wherever you are, if there's because again, there's this task force the state's put together. Let's see who they're going to listen to. Who's going to get on that? Who's going to get to speak to that task force? Who are they going to consult with? I would love to hear from any community groups that want to get in front of that task force to talk about priorities.
That's a good idea because and we're going to announce it here on. You always bringing good stuff here, man. And we need to talk about that because it's an opportunity to fix Kearney so that folks won't look at it as Killiconney and not protest and just say forget it because we weren't getting anything anyway. But that makes it worse for others who may need that service. And it also speaks to the discrimination that goes on in this state. You know, I mean,
Yep.
it's like what's happening here. You know, we just had a U.S. Senator candidate come in, and he talked about his issues growing up, but we feel this every day.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, man, and hopefully your new unit can even
That's the
get
idea.
these conversations stirring up to listen to folks, because many folks don't call in. I mean, many folks don't go to the actual town hall meetings.
Right.
You know, and if they do show up, and if I bring folks with me, they tend to don't speak up because they feel uncomfortable in the environment. So one of the things we've done, you know, with the Real Talk is to hold conversations, to hear folks and record it and bring it to the powers of influence and those that make decisions. Because I am like really tired of hearing that word task force,
Yeah.
surveys,
Yeah.
research. What do you say? Echoes.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on.
Well, I will tell you that there is one part of so my new unit is funded by a grant from the Bar Foundation. Thank you, Bar Foundation. Appreciate that. And one of the things that we are obligated to produce is a series of community conversations where we are out in the world just meeting with folks. And for instance, and again, around Kearney, you know, a lot of the population that was going there was the Vietnamese community around there.
Right.
You know, Fields Corner is very heavily Vietnamese area. I want to go spend time in that community and hear, you know, okay, what are you guys going to do? And again, I don't really know if you went to Kearney and the door was locked. I don't know if the sign on the door telling you where to go instead was in Vietnamese or not. I don't know.
Wow.
But I hope it was.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Right. So, but these become kind of the questions of, okay, is the Vietnamese community in Fields Corner going to share the same concerns as the black community in Dorchester, and can they get together and organize together for these sort of things? Like, these are the kind of things we're going to look for. We're curious. We just want to see if we can listen. We want to listen.
That's good. Well, you know, it's in theory, it sounds good.
Right.
As far as like this Boston, Massachusetts, I'm going to speak about this place where I was born
right
and I
ahead.
grew up,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It is so isolated and operate in silos. It's been like that for years, whether it be neighborhoods, and we give our neighborhood pride. Like, I'm from Mission. I'll say I'm from Mission. I won't even say Boston because there is neighborhood pride. But at the same time, there is folks who don't want to even interact with other folks in other neighborhoods. I went to South Boston High School a couple of weeks ago. The story that was being done, 50-year
Oh, the 50-year anniversary.
of that. Actually, Paris covered.
Paris Olsen went around the
Paris
block.
Olsen from GBH covered the story, and I'd never been to South Boston High School, and I had the opportunity to ride on a school bus. You know, remember, Renee? We used to be on the school buses, and it was the most uncomfortable ride. And I'm like, these kids deal with this? So I went back to Little Ronnie, going to the Edison in Brighton, doing busing, right?
Yeah.
And I said to myself, when I got to South Boston High and I looked down the hill, I said, I'm so glad I was at Boston Latin, even though I had my challenges there. But the the houses are so close, the hill, and
Right
I
on
can
top of each other.
imagine the black kids being touted by white adults.
Right.
Go home.
Yep.
You know, all kind of foul language. And so
It's like one road in and one road out, right? I mean, just
escorted by police, which really didn't matter because we didn't know if they were there to protect us or to harm us, right? And so, and I said to myself, wow, I can't believe this is the first time. I didn't go in, but I was out in front. I've been to South Boston High School. But again, that shows, and not just neighbor, but also sectors.
Well, it's funny because this is something that's been, 'cause again, I'm new to Boston, right? I came 7 years ago, I guess. So I'm putting roots, but
That's
I'm still new.
7 years. That's nothing, man.
I'm still new, right? I know exactly. I'm a
It's
newbie.
infant.
I'm a newbie. I'm just like in my short pants, right? But I met a couple of young black kids. I think we were at the Family Resource Center, maybe. Anyway, so we're down here and we're on Bowdoin Avenue. We're having this conversation about something, and I said, "Well, there's this thing's going on, downtown at the Common or something like that." And they were just like, "We don't go there. Like we never go there."
I know.
I'm like, "Well, what do you mean you don't go? You don't go downtown?" Like, no. Why would we go downtown? There's nothing there for us. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for us to be there.
Right.
I was like, wow, that's kind of shocking, right? The center of the city, where all the business activity, where all this other stuff going on.
The oldest park in America.
Park in America.
Yeah.
And these young black kids growing up 2.5 miles south of there, just like, we don't go.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that really says a lot about sort of how the city is still